The 6 movements of the Song of the Earth are songs for voice and orchestra, and yet they're much more than that. Collectively, they are a narrative that has a story to tell and an ambitious philosophical program to present. One can't remove any element from the whole. It's organic in the truest sense of the word. It's how these songs are connected and the trajectory of the story they have to tell that make this such an original and compelling masterpiece.
The kind of melancholy there was in these poems inspired him really to write a work that would be very different from anything perhaps he had written before, because it was a lived experience.
In the spring of 1907, Mahler was at the pinnacle of European musical life. He had gained fame as a composer of songs and symphonies, and he had been a leading conductor at many opera houses throughout Europe. And now he was the director of the Vienna Court Opera, probably the most prestigious position of that kind in the world. What's more, he was married to Alma Schindler, one of the most attractive and intelligent women in Vienna, and he had 2 beautiful daughters. Life was wonderful in so many ways, yet that was about to change.
Mahler, of course, by this time of his life, had his house built on the Wörthersee in the south of Austria. And it was there, in fact, that the tragic events of 1907 unfolded.
Maria, or Puzzi, which is her little pet name, which simply means cute in English. She suffered for a long, long time, and finally this terrible thing happened, as often happens with diphtheria. They had to make a hole and make her breathe through that hole, and that unfortunately did not save her.
Any child that dies takes a piece of any parent with them. There's no worse tragedy for the natural progression of life than a parent losing their own child. It's unnatural. It's unfair. It almost killed Alma and Gustav both.
This traumatic loss of the oldest daughter at this early point of the summer vacation was a devastating blow to a marriage that was already somewhat under strain. And Alma had been fainting by the lakeside and so on, and he had summoned a doctor to look at Alma, really, because he was worried about her and her health. And the doctor had then looked at him, and the doctor became rather concerned. Mahler himself had quite a serious heart condition.
The valvular damage to his heart in those days almost always meant a death sentence. Apparently, the Viennese heart specialist told him this.
And naturally, he was forced to accept this, and he left Mayenegg, the place on the Wörthersee, to go to the Tyrol, which is quite far away, but he left with Alma, and they came to Toblach.
Quite spectacular landscapes, and Theodor Adorno commented that some of the peaks that he would have seen walking through the forests of that valley would almost look like Chinese mountains in Chinese paintings, which of course brings us a little closer to the world of Das Lied von der Erde.
In what was probably the fall of 1907, Mahler was introduced to a collection of poems published by Hans Bethge called Die chinesische Flöte, the Chinese flute. This was actually a set of recomposed poems from ancient Chinese sources that Bethge had found in a number of translations. These exotic verses had just been published and were examples of culture and ideas from the Far East that brought a new perspective to all the big questions Mahler wanted to pose. These poems contained a certain timelessness and a picturesque reflection on life and death that had a very strong appeal for him.
It's such a powerful thing to want to compose the song of the earth, because it's not a landscape that you are looking at and painting or photographing. When the wind blows, it blows into you. It's part of you. The wind, the rock, the tree, the bird. They are part of us. It's all singing, it's all making sounds. And this, apparently, for my grandfather, was hugely important.
The song of the earth. There's a type of agency involved in that name, as if the earth itself is speaking through this symphony, as if the earth has a contribution to make through song. Of course, nature always had a special place in Mahler's music, but here the earth becomes the centerpiece.
Mahler calls the first song das Trinklied vom Jammer der Erde, the drinking song of the suffering of the earth. And it is in fact a drinking song, but not an average drinking song. True, it begins as a toast, but before the protagonist can down that goblet, he has much to say about the essence of life, and it's not a pretty picture. These are the sounds that Mahler confronts us with at the very opening of the symphony. This exotic combination of pitches that we somehow hear as Eastern. That's because they're made of the 5 pitches of the pentatonic scale. The 5 pitches of the pentatonic scale, to our Western ears, are associated with Eastern music. So the message of Das Lied von der Erde, its origins in Eastern poetry, is immediately apparent.
What Mahler is doing is really setting up an operatic scene. We don't know precisely who the audience for this singer is, but we sense that what we're being confronted with here is something like a court jester or a clown, or the drunken poet, who is a good poet, but is also good for a laugh because he's usually had one too many. And like all jesters, like all clowns at parties, he can be very scary. And indeed, he scares the life out of us, almost quite literally, by the end of the first song.
This mammoth first song that just hits you like a ton of bricks. It is extraordinary what he demands of a tenor, that they have the earthen cry of a desperate human being.
The idea of the suffering of the earth is also our suffering. Life and death are closely related. The refrain of the entire song, dark is life, dark is death, is something that will keep pulling the supposed gesture of happiness and drinking into the realm of the deeply philosophical, if not maudlin.
him be merry, for tomorrow we die. And if life is filled with disappointment and pain, why not live for the moment? Of course, getting drunk is a form of escape, but it can also reduce inhibitions. It can peel back that curtain of fear that hides life's dark side. So yes, he's an angry drunk, but he's also fearless. In a way, he's like Job, shaking his fist at what he believes to be unfair about the human condition.
This anger and denial of this protagonist against a world that does not offer him salvation or peace, of course, is in many ways the opposite of what Mahler wanted to achieve, both as a human being and through his art. But one can sense that at this point in his life, despair was getting the upper hand, at least to some extent. And as Kubler-Ross writes in Death and Dying, one of the first reactions to learning that death may be imminent is anger.
There's this mysterious passage in the middle of the first movement. It evokes the embracing beauty of the earth. But here, nature is a tease. Its gifts given with one hand only to be snatched back with the other. Yet, as the symphony proceeds, the concept of nature evolves, and with life-altering significance.
It's dramatically organised to introduce the drinking song issue, the singer as a poet, the preoccupation with nature, with the spring, the mystery of life renewing itself, but then the singer not necessarily feeling that he is at one with the earth that renews itself.
Das Firmament blaut ewig und die Erde wird lange feststehen und aufblühen im Netz.
We're mortal beings, we die. And as he moves into that picture of the frailty and the limitedness of human existence, he calls up a very particular image, the howling ape. What's the ape doing there? Why is it howling? What does it have to tell us? Is it a representative of eternal nature, reminding us in gruesome fashion of the brevity of our life on earth? In the context of Bethke and Mahler and their generation, certainly the image of the ape had deeply Darwinian connotations. There's no doubt Mahler felt this and designed the entire first song around this moment. We've heard this before. This is the very opening of the symphony. The same music returns with the singer's vision of the howling ape. And only now can we realize that what we've been listening to this whole time is this bone-rattling ape music. Death has been hiding in this song from the very first note.
Mahler's emphasis on our relations to the animal world exposes the assumption that we humans occupy a privileged position, separate from everything else on Earth. But if we too are animals, where does that leave us in terms of our significance as individuals? By shattering the myth of human separateness, Mahler has launched the symphony on a daring but potentially frightening course.
One of the great undertakings of this symphony is to explore our fear of death. And only if we can overcome the paralysis of this fear can we begin to explore potential solutions. In the unfolding of this work as a whole, that's precisely what Mahler does.
With the second movement, we move to those wonderful Chinese landscapes in which you see stylized mountains and mist and maybe a river. As you look carefully, you suddenly find a single human figure, and you realize there is a human viewer of the scene that we're looking at. And it's as if we move into the studio of one of those ancient Chinese scholar artists in the second song, who is experiencing the very existential crisis, in a way, that the first song has been about.
The song opens with this meandering melody in the violins, a wandering pattern that keeps going, but never repeats itself exactly, just like the patterns we find in nature. Then there emerges from the violins the solo oboe, a seeking but reflective melody, an individual's voice searching for answers in this dying landscape of the soul.
It's incredibly graphic, picturesque music. I can imagine Chinese prints that have these kinds of images, enormous stillness, and then this extraordinarily still figure, essentially letting the wash of his existence go in the back of his eyes. And out of that comes these utterances that are sometimes extremely astute to the world around him, and then gaining personal recognition of what that means in real time as he's contemplating. It's a very solitudinal moment. My desire is to embody this transient and intangible moment and atmosphere of both nature and soul.
Ein Künstler habe Staub von Jahren über die feinen Blüten ausgestreut.
While composing the Song of the Earth, Mahler wrote to his friend Bruno Walter, telling him how isolated he felt in Toblach, and yet how necessary this solitude was for his work. After the death of his daughter and the diagnosis of his own ultimately fatal heart condition, it is easy to suspect that in changing the title of the poem from The Lonely Woman in Autumn to The Lonely Man, Mahler was inserting part of himself into the character of this song.
I find it very significant that the poem is originally Die Einsame, which is a feminine, and Mahler changed it to Der Einsame. Now, one could say, oh, how maybe he was already thinking of having the baritone, because there was quite a bit of confusion for many years, even amongst some of the musicologists. Mahler wrote in his own hand for alt or baritone.
It's at this time in his life that Mahler wrote that he needed to surrender to the horrors of loneliness in order to find his way back to himself. And in this second and so mournful movement, we do see a sign of transformation. Once again, we come across the phrase, the sweet fragrance. In the first movement, it was the sweet fragrance of life that the ape's howling pierced. It was a moment of panic in the face of our mortality. But here, the sweet fragrance of the flowers has dissipated. The symphony seems to be nudging us beyond panic and fear to accept the seasons of the earth as our own.
I weep much in my loneliness, he says. He internalizes nature. He associates autumn with an autumn within himself. But then, as we focus on him, we maybe are offered another interpretation, which is that he is telling us that actually he is almost making the autumn that he's seeing because of his own inner emotional sadness.
The complaint, I think, is cosmic, and the cosmic essence is love. I don't think it's a complaint about either the person I loved for 50 years is dead, the person I loved doesn't love me back, the person I want to love has left me, I've just broken. I don't think that's to me just way, way too banal. But that the dark, lonely corner of this existence is defined by the absence of love is without question.
The third movement of Youth opens up with a very strongly pentatonic melody. It's immediately exotic. The aspect of the Far East is apparent to anyone listening. The pentatonicism is obvious.
Mitten in dem kleinen Teiche steht ein Pavillon aus grünem und aus weißem Porzellan. Wie der Rücken eines Tigers wölbt die Brücke sich aufs Jahr zu dem Pavillon hinüber.
Mahler seems to put some effort into making the music sound Oriental. It's a westernized image, but again that image is highly important in that it involves exquisite aesthetic taste and control, and it includes a lot of instruments that make short, sharp sounds. It dances and sparkles, and the sounds are closer to those of Oriental instruments and ensembles.
The picture of youth that we come away with in this movement is one of carefree elegance. The people sitting in a pavilion in the middle of a lake, talking with one another, chatting, writing down verses in beautiful silken garb. It's idealistic beyond reality.
If the Song of the Earth is about dealing with loss and death, it's in its third movement that a kind of acceptance kicks in. In mourning a loved one, the mourner often revisits the past, the places, the objects that are associated with the deceased. And the poem Von der Jugend is one nostalgic return to the past. It's as though, rather than repressing the memory of his daughter or of his own younger self, Mahler lets it surface symbolically to embrace and to release.
Alles auf dem Kopf stehend, in dem Pavillon aus grünem und aus weißem Porzellan. Wie ein Halb steht die Brücke, umgekehrt der Bogen, Freunde schön gekleidet, trinken, plaudern.
The fourth song, he's telling a story. Junge Mädchen pflücken Blumen. You know, young ladies are picking flowers, and they're picking lotus flowers, and they're teasing one another. The sun is shining, and the wind is wafting the sleeves of their very attractive. And all this is enormously descriptive information to imbue the listener with this latent sense of eroticism.
Sonne spiegelt ihre schlanken Glieder, ihre süßen Augen wieder, und es viel mit Schmeicheltusen, das Geübe ihren Ärmel auf.
And out of this moment comes this very graphic music that starts in awakening themes. It gathers momentum. We hear the call of the horn. You can go back through all poetry you want, you know, what's that? You know, it's the guy, right? And here he comes.
The energy of the middle section when the boys on horseback arrive is so strongly characterised and performed that the singer might well also be on horseback. So energetic and so boisterous does the music become that it's really quite difficult to fit in all the notes and all the words, and everybody is breathless by the end of it, leaving us a bit like the girls that we return to, sort of
Es einen Weg fröhlich auf und scheu uns aus dahin. Wir haben ein Gräser Tage in die Ofen. Schieße Tagen, wenn jeden Sport die Hände sunken blüht. Hei, wie flattern im Tamer seinem Bett. Hei, stopp,
There's just so much about procreation that is just permeating everything in this piece. And I just enjoy so much this text. The alliteration of the words, the Büsche that wehen und die Buschen and the flowers, the Blumen, the all over the place in the piece. It's fantastic.
Mahler's role in creating this work was not simply as a composer. He also was very active in changing the texts that he set. One of the changes is to change the scene from a river to a lake. This is the scene that we've had in the previous songs as well. So it provides a continuity of place. Something else that he does is quite interesting. The masculinity of that scene is increased. He adds the steeds, the nostrils flaring.
The erotic, big, beautiful, dark eye with its funk, its spark of recognition, mostly of itself, that self being awakened to its sexuality, you know, by a highly stylized idea of these phallic horses running through this group of nubile girls when everybody's completely titillated. This is fantastic stuff. And it all evaporates and becomes a bit of a Sehnsucht, a longing. It's not fulfilled, which is, in its own way, kind of fulfilling.
Both youth and beauty are wonderful scenes, but ephemeral, disappearing. And not only that, not told in the first person. They're reflections, they're recollections, they're anecdotes that don't live in the present of the protagonist that's been telling the story of the Song of the Earth. It's part of the embrace of life to remember these variegated aspects, but this too is not the end of the work. We have to go beyond beauty, if you will, beyond the superficial, beyond even the joy of life, to something far more profound.
The drunkard in the fifth song is entertaining very much from the word go. He's already had a few before he starts to sing.
The piece starts off in brilliant A major. And when the voice wobbles in, it's in the wrong key.
It begins as a jokey, light-hearted piece, ba-dum-pum-pum, ba-dum-pum-pum, and he enters on the stage and we feel this is comfortable. It's like another scherzo. It's another cheerful movement. We're not going to be made to cry. But then he says, well, if this is the way things are, why am I going to fret about it all? And at that point, we hear a different kind of music. Da-dee, da-da-da-dee. This falling phrase, which has more lyrical life to it. And what is going to happen is that that lyrical voice is going to become more affecting and more prominent. So essentially our drunkard says, well, I'm just going to drink my sorrows away and I'm going to roll home to my door and I'm going to sleep well. And then I'm awoken by a bird singing. Now, at this point, there's a wonderful exchange between Mahler's stylized nature music and the lyrical content of the song. It's a solo violin that sings out of the mass of voices of the orchestra. And here we're told this is the bird. And what's the bird singing? Well, the bird, of course, represents nature, but it's singing da-dee-ah-da-da-da-dee. Very beautifully. It's a bird that plays the violin. Our singer ponders on the beauty of spring and nature, and at that point then becomes more invested in the perhaps more painful implications of the affirmation of the beauty of it all. And for a moment, the singer becomes aware. He notices. And this, of course, is the most affecting point of of the entire song. And when he sings, Der Lenz ist da, it's come overnight. And you feel that he's suddenly woken up. And it's wonderful. And then he says, well, time to drink then, because he can't take it.
One can think of drinking
especially the first song, where he drinks to the profundity of life as an act of revelation as much as one of disgust and terror. In the fifth song, this is not profound intoxication. It's an intoxication of the abandonment of a certain responsibility. It's not the living of life, it's the numbing of life.
At this point in the symphony, we've been reminded of our mortality. We've been reminded of what we love on the earth. We've been reminded that we have nostalgia for it, that we don't want to let it go. We've heard that one possible solution might be to drink all the time. But what happens next? That we don't know. Anyone hearing the piece for the first time, I think, couldn't possibly anticipate how this is going to turn out.
The movement begins with a profound sense of foreboding, low octaves in the bass, and what's more, Mahler added to the orchestration the gong. Something for him which almost always indicated death. What's more, it's this steady pulse in the profound reaches of the orchestra that accompanies this opening and lends to it an air of expectation and the sense of the enormity of the experience.
When he was writing this lied from the Erde, and he had lost Maria, and he had got the great shock about his own health, he went way beyond it. He was so 100% truthful as an artist and as a man that there was no avoidance, there was no denial possible. It was so immense that he had to take it in. He had to take it into every part of his body and soul. And then he had to come out on the other side and then to leave the world something so totally beautiful, which helps us through.
As this opening section moves forward, something quite remarkable happens. Time drops out entirely. When Mahler turned to the score here, he removed all bar lines and he let the voice simply speak. In a kind of presentation of text we would call recitative, a free-flowing unfolding of pitches that are half spoken, half sung. And we get the mood and the atmosphere and the setting for the entire movement.
This undulating, sort of undefined rhythm starts rocking, and even as you sing about der Bach singt voller Wohllaut, and he writes in there that in fact the flute, which is rather low in its range, that is starting to accompany the voice, should have predominance, that the voice should not overwhelm the sound of the flute.
For Mahler, there's a melding of instrumental tone color and textual imagery. A form of presenting music that dissolves the border between word and tone. as the world falls asleep and the bird of the night gives its cry into that eternity, the protagonist and we are awake. We are at a moment of privileged insight into what happens next. The notion of sleep and forgetting that we saw in the fifth movement of the drunkard who wants no part in understanding why the spring comes back every year, now has been pushed aside to a moment of revelation, a moment of contemplation and embrace of those questions.
All this stuff we call the world goes to sleep. And then you have the flute.
Es wird kühl im Schatten meiner Fichte. Ich stehe hier und harre meines
And what are you doing here? Why aren't you asleep? Well, I'm waiting for my dearest friend, because it's our last and final farewell to one another.
Drunk with eternal love and life. And this eternal love and eternal life come entangled together in the earth. But of course, a de-romanticized view of nature can seem empty of love, a place of mere survival, indifferent to individual suffering. And what Mahler seems to be saying is that love pumps the universe. The universe is alive. Our matter matters, even as we die.
We're brought back in confrontation once again with the idea of the March of Death. In fact, in his manuscript, Mahler writes at the return of the march here, Grabgeläute, the sounds of the grave. So we see now the two aspects of musical organization that Mahler presents in Der Abschied. The deep tones and march-like rhythm of ominous foreboding representing death, and the free-flowing release from predictability that is representing nature.
Stieg vom Pferd und reichte ihm den Trunk des Abschieds dar. Fragte ihn, wohin führe und auch warum es mir.
We have these two entities, these two psyches that are one in friendship, one in love, one in time, spatial, temporal reference, remaining one, and yet separating on every possible recognizable level.
In an ending that signals the dissolution of the individual into timelessness, Mahler transforms a traditional scale, note by note, into a whole tone scale, a scale with no beginning and no end. He begins with this scale. Alters a single note and then another. This moment of tremendous arrival is at the same time a transformation of a poetic line that Mahler himself wrote and inserted into the first and last movements. The text is about the earth blossoming forever in springtime. The first time we hear it, it unleashes mortal reckoning and terror, the episode of the howling ape. But this time, springtime grows out of a new awareness that we are enfolded in the earth and that we too participate in that eternity.
He just walks up to the moment of transition out of this world, doesn't speculate farther than to present, as it were, light coming from over the edge, but it is definitely light.